Well, it was definitely a sign of the times, with the Prime Minister swearing in his new-look cabinet via video link today, while also in Canberra, the new Chief Medical Officer, John Kelly, was upbeat about the new testing figures out of New South Wales. I caught up with Sky News political reporter Trudy McIntosh a little earlier. Trudy McIntosh, the Chief Medical Officer, was understandably quite impressed with those figures coming out of New South Wales today.
44,000 tests, and of those only 8 confirmed COVID cases. He was praising the enormous testing effort that we've seen, not just in New South Wales but across the country. But if you do put those numbers into perspective, 44,000 in New South Wales, to the north just 8,000 COVID tests in the same time frame. We've always talked about New South Wales being the gold standard of contact tracing, and this was really going to be one of those big tests for them, Chris. Were they going to be able to keep on top of this pandemic? It looks like for now, hopefully if the update tomorrow is a similar number of cases, the New South Wales Premier indicating that she won't necessarily need to go harder in the few days in the lead up to Christmas, which will be such a relief for so many.
Kelly also mentioned, though, that the UK variant that they're facing at the moment is of concern to us because we've got it now in hotel quarantine, and we don't know too much about it, do we?
Well, there's only 4 cases confirmed in Australia at the moment of this mutated UK strain. There has been a lot of concern around the world after Boris Johnson made this announcement, move to even tougher restrictions in the UK. Australia not following the approach, though, a lot of other countries. You know that Europe and Canada, for example, very quick to say that they would be cancelling and blocking these flights into their country. The Prime Minister yesterday didn't want to go down that path, and today Professor Kelly as well, indicating that Australia's hotel quarantine system, whilst there's been issues in Victoria and we do see seepages of sorts so far in New South Wales, they do believe it's up to scratch in terms of staying on top of this virus and that mutated strain. It's worth noting that even Paul Kelly points out that whilst, yes, it's more transmissible is the evidence so far, there's no evidence to say that it necessarily makes the disease worse or more harmful, and there's no evidence yet that it makes it not effective to the vaccines that are starting to be rolled out across the world.
That's reassuring. Now, a swearing-in ceremony like we've never seen before.
Yes, certainly that was the case today here at Government House in Canberra. We've seen a lot of differences in Canberra during the COVID pandemic. Today, all of Morrison government's new front bench ministers sworn in via video link. We saw a pretty smooth ceremony, it must be said. It was making all its way through until it got to Amanda Stoker, and we had some audio issues out of the Queensland office. But all in all, a pretty minor shake-up by comparison to what some had been expecting. We know, keep an eye out for what happens with Dan Tehan in trade. Is he going to be able to reset that rocky relationship with China? I certainly wouldn't be holding my breath.
Yeah, we'll be watching that closely. Now, finally, Albo's staff got tangled up in the COVID-19 problem.
Yeah, this is one of the many exposure sites in Sydney. It's the Sydney CPO, as we refer to it, number 1 Bligh Street. It's where all of the parliamentary offices for federal MPs are based in the Sydney city. Last Thursday, someone who was positive to COVID was in the building for 20 minutes. So 2 of Anthony Albanese's staff were there at the time, have got tested and subsequently tested negative. We've also learned today that Paul Fletcher, the communications minister, was in the building. He also has now tested negative. And Jason Falinski was on Sky News this afternoon. He is awaiting his results of his COVID test after going to the CPO, he said, for the first time in a year, on the very day there's a positive case for COVID.